Minasan konnichiwa. Welcome to another edition of Have a Coke and Tea with the Society. My name is Yoshi Domoto. I'm the Executive Director of the Japan America Society of Georgia. As we celebrate Asian American Heritage Month, we have a very special session as we highlight one of the first Japanese companies to come to our state here in Georgia, YKK. But without further ado, I just want to share that I am enjoying a nice hot tea. It's a little rainy today, so but hopefully everyone is staying safe and healthy. But without further ado, I would like to introduce our two special guests, Mr. Jim Reed and Miss Jessica Cork from YKK. So, Mr. Jim, what are you enjoying today?
Yoshi, I'm enjoying a Coca-Cola from our good friends downtown. Good Georgia company. Loving it.
Locally brewed and freshly made, right?
Locally brewed. That's right. It was a good week.
Nice. And Jessica, what about you? What are you enjoying?
Hi, Yoshi. I am a coffee drinker, so I do have coffee, and I would say I would do anything for Georgia Coffee Cafe Ole right now. That is my first thing that I always get in Tokyo as soon as I arrive, and unfortunately, not sold here. They need to start selling that here in Georgia.
Definitely. Hopefully one day we can make a petition for Coca-Cola to start having Georgia coffee here in Georgia, right? So
that's right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Jim, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what type of work you do.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. Well, it's great to be here. My name's Jim Reed. I am president of YKK Corporation of America. And this company is the holding company of the YKK operations in the Americas. So starting April 1st, we expanded to cover all of the Americas, and we go from Canada to Argentina, and we pretty much have operations in most of the countries in between. I've been with YKK for a relatively short period of time, 12 or 13 years. I need to go back and count. But am a recovering attorney and had the pleasure of serving as the general counsel of YKK before taking on this role.
Wonderful, and congratulations on the big announcement of becoming the headquarters of the Americas. That's so exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. And Jessica, tell us a little bit about yourself and then what you do at YKK.
Sure. I'm Vice President of Community Engagement and Corporate Communications. So I work in the same office as Jim, and I handle our internal communications, external communications, community and government relations. And I also do a lot of work with our promoting our philosophy and core values, both inside and outside the company.
Well, wonderful. Well, speaking of core values and kind of your history, Jim, can you tell us a little bit about YKK? I know it was one of the first Japanese companies to come to Georgia, but how did it all get started?
Yes, well, YKK was founded in 1934 by an extremely interesting person, Tadao Yoshida, who grew up in the country. I mean, way out in the country. In Western Japan, and really kind of limited formal education, but extremely intelligent person. We know that because he wrote a lot and basically built this company on intelligence, but primarily on a philosophy. And that's really something that we are most proud of. And he called it the cycle of goodness. No one prospers without rendering benefit to others. And the YKK company, from these very humble beginnings, grew globally, where we're now just shy of 50,000 people in 70 countries and territories around the world. And we make zippers. You might have seen that on there. But we make a bunch of other stuff too, primarily architectural products. When you talk about architectural products in the United States, what we're talking about are things called curtain walls. And those are the skin of a skyscraper. Commercial doors, like when you walk in, next time you can walk into a Chick-fil-A, look down in the corner, you will see YKK AP. So, we make those things, and storefronts. So the front of a shopping center. We also make residential windows and residential doors, and all of that is made in in Georgia. Until we recently expanded into Canada, but yeah, so we do that as well. And so the cycle of goodness is, and it is exciting as a philosophy because it helps you drive your performance, helps you drive where you're going. It was nice to see the Business Roundtable, an organization of CEOs in the United States. It's a wonderful organization, and back a few years ago, it was chaired by Jamie Dimon, the CEO and chairman of J.P. Morgan. And during Jamie Dimon's tenure, they made a very important declaration. And what they said was that corporations are no longer, it's not appropriate to consider corporations as merely means by which to secure returns for shareholders' investments, right? So corporation has more than a meaning of just to give returns to the shareholder. A corporation needs to be a participant in the community. A corporation is part of that community and has that responsibility to take care of that community. And that was touted as a very exciting and innovative and forward-thinking evolution in corporations. Well, from our perspective, we were like, thanks, where you guys been? We've been doing this entire time. And it's a great place to work because of that, where you are a business and you do have a return, but you also have to think about how you impact everybody. So when we talk about shareholders or stakeholders, we are talking about suppliers. We are not just customers. I mean, customers, of course. We're talking about, of course, our employees, but we're also talking about the community around us. What sort of emissions are we giving out during our manufacturing process? How does that impact the community? What can we do to make the community stronger around us because we're part of that community? When we talk about stakeholders, one of the interesting aspects, to me at least, that's not discussed is the shareholder. And because you're thinking about all of these other things, you create a success. And in turn, the shareholders are taken care of. So if all you're worried about is what is the dividend, what is the return, what is the stock growth, that's where your focus is. And when you think about the community, if your focus is on the community or your customer, the returns and the dividends come anyway. That's the exciting aspect of the cycle of goodness from my perspective, because you don't have to just say, oh, we're altruistic people, so we want to join this company. It is actually a model for success.
That's amazing that from zippers to all the way into architectural products, the growth, and like you said, it's all because of kind of the community aspect and the circle of goodness.
Cycle of goodness, right.
Cycle of goodness, sorry, the Zendon Jinkan, right? So
that's right. So you said you were one of the first companies to come to Georgia, and that's not incorrect. But I can say we were the first company to come to Georgia. We opened a sales office in New York City in 1960. We opened a sales office in Georgia in 1970. We broke ground on our factory in Macon in 1973, opened doors in 1974. We've got 250 acres, 2.5 million square feet of manufacturing space in Macon that we've been in operation since then. And then we've got the architectural products plant is down in Dublin, Georgia, going strong. And so we've got a big facility down there as well. We've got a facility in Alabama. We've got a facility in Kentucky. We've got a facility in California. We've got sales offices all over the place. And we're now looking at, multiple generations of Americans manufacturing in the United States. So to a large extent, we're an American company, and to a larger extent, we're really a global company.
Great, thank you so much. And so Miss Jessica, kind of going to you now. Jim just talked about all the great things with the cycle of goodness and supporting the community. Can you tell us just a few examples about the different projects and programs you've done, whether it's in Macon or Dublin, other parts of Georgia that YKK's done such a great job of with the cycle of goodness?
Sure. Well, we actually have a perfect example that was just announced this morning. So if you take a look at our LinkedIn page, you can see that. But YKK helps to facilitate sister city relationships between Macon and Kurobe, Japan, and then also the city of Dublin in the southern part of Georgia, Dublin, and Osaki, Japan. And Osaki is in Miyagi Prefecture, which was one of the regions that was pretty devastated by the tsunami back in 2011. So this year, we're marking the 10th anniversary of that earthquake and tsunami. And we were able to work together with the JSG and the Consulate General of Japan. And the students of Dublin folded 1,000 paper cranes and wrote hundreds of messages, and they were presented this morning to the mayor of Osaki. So you can go and you can see some pictures of that, but it was just, the city of Dublin had sent some photos of the kids working so hard to fold those paper cranes. The consulate did a workshop, online to show the students how to fold it. And, if you look closely, you can tell that, the students are really not used to doing origami, they don't know so much about how to do it. And so they, Japanese students can put together a crane in like seconds. These kids, were working so hard. 1,000 cranes that were sent, and really kind of brightened the spirits of the people in Osaki, remembering all that devastation 10 years ago, but also looking forward. They were filled with messages of hope. The students wrote in Japanese, so they looked up, through Google Translate or whatever, and wrote the cards in Japanese. It was just really inspiring. So that's just one example. In Macon, we, unfortunately this year with COVID, we've had to put on pause some of our in-person exchanges, but normally also Macon is an extremely active sister city. It just celebrated 44th anniversary just a couple of days ago on May 10th. And we have basically 3 exchanges that are taking place every year. So we have middle school students that they travel to Macon every other year. And then Macon high school students travel to Japan every other year. So they're going back and forth and staying in each other's homes. We actually try to pair the students who hosted a student. That same student will go back to Japan and stay in their host student's home. So they get to see kind of how each other's lives are, and also develop what we hope will be a long-term relationship, not just that 1 week. So the students text each other and stay in contact afterwards through, Instagram and other social media. We also have high school students from Kurobe that come also every other year. And we have a really interesting doctor exchange program. And I am not entirely sure if it's the only one in the United States, but if it's not, it's extremely rare. So this program is also over 15 years old, and every year in the fall, we have approximately 6 relatively young medical students, so residents. So they've completed their medical training, but they're now working in the hospital in Kurobe. They come to spend a month at Navicent Health, which is the big hospital down in Macon, and they shadow doctors, usually very, very senior doctors that have been practicing, years and years and years, but they shadow them. They walk, do all their rounds, everything that they do, they're like by their side the entire time. And they especially get to focus on certain illnesses that may not be as prevalent in Japan. And then those same doctors who host those students in the following May go to Japan for 3 weeks, and they go together with their families, but they give a series of lectures for the residents in the hospital in Japan as well. And this program is not just about the people-to-people exchange, which is, of course, a really important component of it. But the other thing is that this has real benefit for especially the hospital in Kurobe. Kurobe is a rural area. It's in Toyama Prefecture. There's only 40,000 people there. It's cold. Like Jim and I have both been there in the winter. It is chilly. It rains quite a lot. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. But they have a really hard time recruiting young doctors to want to work there. Most of the young doctors want to work in Tokyo or Osaka or some big, fancy city. And since they implemented this program 15 years ago, they are able to fill every single slot that they have for residents, medical residents, every single year. The students, or the residents really want to participate in this program. They see it as a huge benefit. They learn a lot. So that's a good example of how a sister city relationship that was started, by YKK has grown. I mean, that medical exchange was not our idea from YKK. That came completely from the people who are involved in the sister city relationship, but it has real, business economic benefit, and not just the good relationships that are being built between cities.
Wow, I know with all that's happening today, it's more important than ever, certainly for young people, children, to have that opportunity to promote peace and exchange and cultural understanding with people from different backgrounds. So we certainly commend all that you're doing. And certainly with the doctors exchange program, like you said, it's not just a people-to-people relationship. That's certainly a big aspect of it, but it has the kind of the real world, kind of real life benefits with, business, kind of the medical industry and healthcare too. And with the pandemic, I'm sure it's certainly going to be kind of an ongoing program that's going to be very, very vital to continue on for both, Americans and Japanese doctors. So thank you for that all you do.
And Jessica was talking about the value of the doctor. I think it's also worth noting that the American doctors going over to Japan will also find their practice improved going forward, right? I mean, we talked a little bit with them about how they learn about a more holistic approach to a patient's health that you can only learn in places like Japan, where in the United States, it's like, okay, here's a problem. Where's the chemical? Where's the procedure that we can apply to alleviate this problem? Where the Japanese doctor is going to look at a broader, the whole patient. What do I prescribe you sleep? Do I prescribe you exercise and massage? And what are those real benefits associated with that? So that was very interesting, exciting for us to learn about that back and forth as well. So you never really know where and the cool thing is with these types of exchanges from elementary school or middle school kids to physicians, you have no idea what seeds will be planted, but you can be certain that seeds will be planted and they will stay.
For sure. Well, Jim and Jessica, I know you have very close ties to Japan. You speak Japanese as well, but you both look American. So Jim, we'll start with you. What was your connection to Japan? Kind of how did you get your journey started? Kind of with kind of U.S.-Japan connection, and then certainly working at YKK as well.
Well, I'm a kid of the '80s, and so in the United States, Japan became very important to the United States in the '80s. And I was in college and just a regular guy in college. And I didn't want to go to work for a bank. And that was pretty much the only opportunity available to me. And so towards the end of my college career, I was like, I need to go somewhere else cool. And so that was it, and went to Kansai Gaidai in my final year of college. And that's in Hirakatashi in Osaka. And so that was the most important, non-marriage decision I made in my life. And it just changed my trajectory. And so after that, I came back to Atlanta, got a job working with Japanese companies, and then went to law school and continued on. And no, I do not speak Japanese. I study Japanese. I can speak cocktail Japanese very, very poorly, but I do love Japanese. I do love the Japanese culture very, very much, even more so now than ever. So I love studying it more than I ever did before. And so there's a deep, deep love. In fact, my wife and I are talking about, can we figure out some way if we retire to go to Japan and you see these houses, they talk about these houses out in the country and you can renovate them. And that would be very, very exciting to me. So I would absolutely love that. Jessica, of course, has a much deeper, Jessica does speak Japanese. There's very, very, very few people who I would say speak Japanese, who are not Japanese, who say do speak Japanese fluently. And Jessica is one of them. And so she's got a really fascinating story.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that intro. I can tell you now how hard I worked to attempt to speak Japanese because that came with many, many, many years of hard work. But it's interesting, Jim, that you mentioned, kind of being a kid of the 80s, because that was really probably the reason why I ended up getting interested in Japan as well. It's funny how society and what is around us influences us, especially when we're kids and we don't realize what's happening. But I had a couple things happen, but one of the most memorable was my grandfather worked for IBM, and that was at the height, of the Japanese bubble economy, and he went to Japan quite frequently. I mean, I think for that time period, pretty frequently, a couple times, and once per year. And he used to bring me back gifts from those trips. And I have pictures of me being about 9 years old wearing, now they were like the polyester, kimono that you get at the airport, I'm sure. But I was just absolutely enamored with that. And I also had an introduction to Asia through my family connections as well. So I don't remember a time when I wasn't interested in Asia, but Japan specifically. And then that was kind of compounded, Karate Kid came out, and there was just a lot of, I'm embarrassed to admit I'm dating myself quite a lot, but I'm sure that movie also had a big effect on me. But anyway, I just decided that I wanted to go to Japan. I wanted to learn how to speak Japanese. Now, I have to say that I grew up in rural New Hampshire. I come from a town of 7,000 people. I mean, people don't go to Canada from New Hampshire. I mean, they don't go to Massachusetts, never mind Japan. So when I started talking to some of my friends and, boyfriend at the time and whatever, everyone was sort of like, why would you want to go there? Like, what's, this was before anime and everything, where Japan was really cool. It was just totally unknown. But luckily I have extremely supportive parents. Like, I think back to it, I was 15 when I went. This is prior to internet days. So basically they put me on the plane to Japan and I did not talk to them for the next 9 weeks. But I went as an exchange student to stay with a Japanese family in Hiroshima Prefecture. And the family, the father spoke English, but he was never home, kind of typical Japanese family. He was not home. The mother and 3 kids were wonderful people, did not speak English. I spoke zero Japanese. I don't even think I knew how to say konnichiwa. So I'm sitting there with my dictionary and frantically drawing pictures and everything. And I honestly, looking back on it, that was an absolute pivotal moment in my life, because I was extremely shy before then and very self-conscious, and and then to go to a place where you're blonde hair and blue-eyed and most people hadn't seen a foreigner before and everyone's paying attention and you're just on display everywhere you go. I think it really helped to develop a lot more confidence. At least I didn't learn much Japanese despite the 9 weeks, but I did develop more of a sense of feeling like, if I can do this, I can probably be okay, doing other things that were a challenge. I do remember the utter panic when they dropped me off on the platform in Hiroshima, and I went through Youth for Understanding, which is an excellent exchange program. But basically, you arrive at the station and they're like waving to you from the inside of the Shinkansen, saying, "Bye, see you in 8 weeks." I mean, I had zero contact with anybody that was from either YFU or any other American for 8 weeks, and they just dropped me off. But anyway, fabulous, wonderful, wonderful people. Of course, it's the Japanese hospitality. I can't imagine, looking back on it now, what they spent on me. I mean, we went somewhere every day, got to try all kinds of amazing things. So I came back and I said, I'm going to major in Japanese at college. Now, again, I have to give a lot of credit to my parents, because again, my parents are in the medical field. My mom's a nurse, my dad's a physical therapist. They went to school for nursing and physical therapy. It very easily translates into a career. They let their kid major in Japanese with no idea what someone does with a Japanese degree. And honestly, I had no idea what someone does with a Japanese degree. But I absolutely loved, studying the language. I went to University of Massachusetts, and the reason I chose that school was because it had intensive classes for 4 years. So we had 6 credit classes. And so that meant, studying Japanese every single day. I will tell you, Jim, talks about me speaking Japanese, but that entire first year, I think I wanted to quit. I just wondered what on earth I'd gotten myself into. Day one, all the classes were in Japanese. There was no English used. There was no romanization used. We had to learn 50 kanji a week. And, so basically 10 a day, exams every day. And I remember one of my professors at one point said, learning kanji is like letting the bathtub run, but having the spigot on the bottom open, because if you don't, you don't retain all of them, you're just learning for the test, and then there it goes. And so like most of them are having to learn over and over and over again. And it was just so intense and so grueling.
You're not selling people on this.
Well,
you need to change the story a little bit. It was great. It was magical.
Well,
it just flowed right into my brain. It's this moment like the movie Arrival, where you just kind of absorb it all and it just happens. Yeah, everybody's like, I used to like that. Sounds really cool, but I'm not doing that.
Well, I have to say it was a big challenge. So that's what kept me going with it for more than 27 years now that I'm studying Japanese, because I haven't mastered it yet. There's always something new to learn. So I ended up doing those intensive classes at UMass. I did a summer intensive class at International Christian University in Tokyo, which was the 8 to 10 hour a day intensive classes. You basically study an entire year of college level Japanese in 10 weeks with a homestay. Again, though, back to the wonderful things, I would say, first of all, the Japanese language, but really it was the Japanese people. Like that's honestly what really kept me studying the language. Was the language can be very frustrating at times. Actually, spoken is not really so bad, but the written, but being able to communicate with people. But then, and then I did a 1-year study abroad also at ICU. But the huge challenge that I faced after graduating was becoming a JET program participant. And so I thought I spoke Japanese when I graduated from college. And then I got to rural Hiroshima, again, town of 4,000 people. And my boss starts talking to me, and he can only speak Hiroshima dialect. And the particular brand of Hiroshima dialect that is very particular to this area of Hiroshima, I could not understand a word he said. I mean, really nothing that my boss was telling me, I understood he said. I actually had a woman who sat next to me. She used to interpret to me into standard Japanese, like everything he would say, so that I could respond to him. So it was like a whole other level of learning Japanese. But anyway, so those were all really wonderful experiences, but still I came back to the US and I still had no idea what one did with a language degree. So I knew I didn't want to teach English. I know lots of people love teaching English in Japan, and that's definitely a good career there's many friends who built their entire career around that. But that was, I did a bit of it, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do long term, but I wasn't sure what else to do. And everyone had really just been pointing me into translation and interpretation. And that's just what I assumed that one did with the language degree. So I actually moved to Georgia to work as an interpreter at a Japanese manufacturing company, not YKK. Did not know anyone here in Georgia, not a single friend, not any relatives, nobody. I didn't know anything about anything here. I just moved here for the job and found out pretty quickly I really hate interpreting. I can do it if I have to. I love translating, actually. I really dislike interpreting, and I didn't know that until I did it. But the reason that I want to mention it is because I talked to quite a few students, especially those studying Japanese, and I think it's really important to also, in some respects, have a negative experience too, because you don't really know what you love, until you get to try a variety of different things. And so, I found out pretty quickly, okay, that's not the thing. That is not the thing for me. But about a year after that, a position opened at the Consulate General of Japan in Atlanta, and I spent the next 11 years there. And that's where I was introduced to PR and communications, which I found out I absolutely love. Love working in a PR and communications field, especially when I have the opportunity to use my Japanese language ability. And then that kind of led to my position now at YKK, where I've been for 8 years. So sorry, that was a really long story, but
no, that's great. But there's something I definitely want to add to that, and that is that we talk about PR and communications, and traditionally we might think of that as things like press releases, or did you arrange for this article, or how do we get this thing up there? What I wanted to tell folks is that although we use those words still, it's a lot different. So in Jessica's role, well, in anyone's role, what I think I've come to learn about leadership, it is communications. Leadership is communications. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how great your plan is. If you can't properly tell people what it is, they can't follow you. And so Jessica's great skill is to use many different platforms and types of communications to communicate the feeling, the ethos, the philosophy, the strategy to our employees and to our community. And that's where success comes. So I think it's such a much, you talk about, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this stuff. You can lead. So that's another job.
Well, and yeah, to add to that, I was just one last thing I was going to say also, Jim, to that point, because I've had a lot of experience working with Japanese people and Japanese culture, a lot of the skills that I've gained in understanding how people from different countries and cultures think has really benefited me in working now with colleagues in Mexico or colleagues in Brazil or colleagues in, this morning I was on a call with, Turkey. And it's, that's another really important skill for a global society. So even if you focus on one particular language and one particular area, you're still learning the communication skills, how to speak clearly and slowly and not use a lot of jargon, and to try to read facial cues and nonverbal communications. And that's a huge benefit. So that's something
that's probably a mental acuity or elasticity that you wouldn't get if you're just kind of dealing with your own culture and your own language 100% of the time.
Certainly with a global company like YKK, it's critical, right? To be able to share your story, not only in English or Japanese or, Spanish or another language, but also be able to, the way you tell your story, like Jessica just mentioned, each culture has their own way of kind of telling stories throughout the history, and, being able to kind of adapt to kind of that culture and that kind of historical background, I think is more important than ever. So certainly commend both you, Jim, and Jessica for being such great communicators and leaders. But so from our story, kind of from kind of Japan to kind of YKK, tell us before we kind of end some about your hobbies. What do you like to do when you're outside of work? I'm sure you'd love to spend time with your family, but what do you enjoy when you're outside of, I guess, the quote unquote walls of YKK?
Jessica, you going or am I going?
Why did you go first? I talk too much.
I get to go. I get to go first. Okay. Well, I have 3 kids in high school, so I do that. So I really enjoy that. And frankly, this, COVID, I used to travel a lot, and I probably will be traveling a lot in the future. But during COVID, I stayed home. They stayed home, and I feel very fortunate that they were old enough to not drive me crazy, and but we didn't drive each other crazy. We were able to hang out, and so that was a great pleasure. I like to do small triathlons, and I do that with my daughter, so we get to hang out and do that. I love studying. I love reading. I love studying. I think that one of my strongest interests right now is being able to enjoy the opportunity that we have in this region, and really around the world, but in this region, in things like manufacturing or computer data science. I think we're really, really on the cusp of an amazing new shift in how we live our lives and how we produce. And it's going to be, and to be with YKK and our sustainability goals and the fight against global warming, all of those things are very exciting. So none of it feels like work, and I really like studying and talking about it. So that's really pretty much all I do.
Jessica, what about?
Yeah, well, so I have 4 kids, so also a whole lot of my time is spent kind of taking care of them, especially during this COVID time. But I also absolutely love to travel. Keeping my tally, I believe I've been to 25 countries so far, and have a lot more on my list. I have taken some of my kids. I mean, by the time that my youngest was 3 years old, he had been to 5 countries. So they're already, including Japan. Well, they've been to Japan twice actually, and Korea. And Europe as well. And it's always really great to travel with kids to sort of see what their reaction is. And sometimes they're really excited, and sometimes they're totally bored at the things where you're like, you just don't have any idea what you're looking at. Like, why are you bored? So that has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to getting back into being able to travel with my family, especially before some of them are getting ready to go on to college as well. And then I love learning foreign languages. So of course I have the Japanese thing, but when I was in high school, I had taken French and Spanish, and during COVID, I've been trying to work a bit to pick that up a little bit, kind of refresh my memory on French and Spanish. And I've been studying some Portuguese as well, and some Chinese as well. In college, I had taken Mandarin. So I like to do that. And I am a huge fan of listening to podcasts. That's how I get whenever I'm like out walking or something, that's where I get a lot of my learning, just on different things I'm interested in. And I do have to say something about Japan America Society as well, because I really love volunteering. I love to volunteer for organizations that I really care about, and Japan America Society is definitely one of them. That's one of the best ways that I find to network, because you're able to connect with people who have similar interests as you, and it makes it a little easier to make friends and good connections that way. And I'm also serving on the founding board of the International Charter Academy of Georgia, which is a Japanese English dual language immersion charter school that just opened 3 years ago. And that can be quite busy as far as a volunteer activity, but at the same time, it's really rewarding to see, the students. And we've got a lot of Georgia, students, kindergarten and first grade, don't know anything about Japan, and they study for like a year, and then their Japanese is better than mine at the end of it. So very rewarding.
Wow. So both of you have such kind of balanced and exciting lives. So just wish I could maybe like tag along one day and see what it's like. But to take us out, maybe we can ask Jessica first, then you, Jim. But can you tell us a little bit about your future goals, whether it's professional or personal, and then kind of messages of hope for our members moving forward?
Future goals. It's funny, Jim mentioned about the houses in Japan, the Akiya, the abandoned homes in Japan, because I had exactly the same idea. Some way that when I retire, like renovating one of those houses, that would be awesome. Like I've seen quite a lot of them in the town where I live. But anyway, I definitely want, just personally, a lot more travel. But when I retire, I do plan to retire overseas somewhere. I don't know where, whether it's Japan or other places, but that's one of the goals that I'm working towards. But don't worry, Jim, I love to work, so I don't think my husband teases me. He's like, you're not going to retire till like 75, just because I love my job so much, and he's probably right. So, and then just, I guess professionally, I'm very excited about being able to work in a global company, because of course, I love to be able to work with my colleagues in Japan, but especially over the past year with COVID, I've had the opportunity to connect a lot more with various global teams, because it's just easier for us to talk and connect, and getting to learn about different places, different ways of doing business, different ways of thinking. Sometimes, even though we're all working for the same company, there's a lot of people. I mean, YKK just has really great people. And I'm not saying that just because I work here. I mean, really, there's something about our culture that is so great. I've just met the nicest people, made the best friends. So that's one thing that I'm very excited about right now is how our work will change with all of these new technologies that we have to connect, exactly how we're connecting right now, where we can be talking to each other all over the world, teams in 6 countries. And that's very exciting to me.
Great, thank you. So maybe Jessica, you can have a home in Hiroshima or outside of Hiroshima, and Jim can have one in Kansai somewhere, right? So you guys can visit each other. But Jim, how about you? Future goals, personal, professional, and then messages of hope?
Yeah, I'm going to Toyama. It's the best sushi and the best sake on the planet. So that's where I'm going. Yeah, so I was talking a little bit about, we're entering this next machine age. that's going to rival the Industrial Revolution. It's so exciting. I mean, Jessica's talking about, when we were kids, there was no internet, and look where we are now, and look where we're going to go next. And COVID has taught us a lot of lessons about what's important, what's not important. And so we and other companies are going to really drive into that. And corporations are going to continue to take a more important role in leadership, especially as political leadership becomes more fractious. I think corporations have a role to play, or the leaders of corporations have a role to play to help the community and drive us forward. Sustainability, we have the opportunity to avoid great catastrophe. And so we're going to move forward with that. I mean, there can't be, other than, a moonshot, there's nothing really more exciting than that to be able to do. So, I do have fantasies about retiring to have a farm somewhere. I already have my beekeeper suit, so I'm ready to go. But probably more likely, one of the things I'm playing around with is, because we have regional responsibilities, we have the opportunity to use Zoom. And because you want to connect with people as well, rather than having an office and sitting in an office and then visiting places, I actually think it might be more interesting and better to ride the circuit, where I'll just be spending several weeks in Brazil, then several weeks in Colombia, then several weeks in Canada, not in the wintertime. I'll pick my times, but that seems like that's something I'm playing around with, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, very nice. Well, thank you so much both for your time. We definitely need more Jim Reeds and Jessica Quirks in the world for sure, and hopefully the Japan America Society on all of the various community organizations here in Georgia. We can collaborate with YKK and playing a small part of the cycle of goodness and promoting peace and understanding with people from all over the world. So thank you both for all your support throughout the years, and look forward to doing bigger and better things together.
Thank you, Yoshi. Appreciate it. Japan America Society does not play a small role. It's a very, very important role. I'm always amazed to see the scope of the programs that you put on, and all those seeds that you plant, all those connections that you guys plant, from students to adults. I really admire it. So thank you for that.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.